Almost 80% of so-called able-bodied Canadians have a job. But if you're dealing with a disability, it's less than half who have a job. Joining us now to tell us what employers can do to change that number, in Richmond, Virginia via Skype, there's Debra Ruh. She is Global Disability Inclusion Strategist and Head of Ruh Global Communications. And Debra, we're happy to have you on the line via Skype from the Commonwealth of Virginia. Good to have you on TVO tonight. How are you?
I'm doing great, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Not at all. I'd like to start by asking what your motivation was for getting involved in employing people with disabilities.
Well, my motivation, I was in the banking industry for many years, and I'm a proud mother of two grown children now, and my oldest daughter she was born with Down syndrome, and she has been my motivation all along the way, and she's really been a muse to me as well. She's made her life pretty amazing.
And how old is she now, Debra?
She's 27 years old.
Gotcha. And what kinds of jobs were so-called experts telling you over the years that she would, quote unquote, only be capable of doing?
Well, the experts suggested that she could bring shopping carts in from the malls, the Target or the Walmarts, and that was their reach goal. And I decided that I really thought my daughter could do so much more than that. So instead of complaining about what they suggested, I decided to try to become part of the solution.
And what did you discover in trying to become part of that solution?
Well, I discovered it's very, very hard to start your own business and to keep it profitable. But I was in the banking industry and technology and training, and so I created a technology company here in the United States called Tech Access. And over 80% of our team were technologists with disabilities. And so I discovered, I really thought it was a great idea, and it was embraced by a lot of the big multinational companies, including Canadian companies. Taleo was one of our customers, and TD Bank, for example. And but it's really, really hard having your own business. It's very hard. It's very rewarding and very hard.
What is it you were actually trying to do, though?
Well, I was a technology company, and at first what we were going to do, I started it in 2001. So we were going to do web design, us and millions of other companies. And so around that time in the United States, we were updating our Rehabilitation Act, which was including Section 508, which said that our United States government had to make sure all of their technology was accessible. So we decided that it would make sense to have a technology company that helped our government and corporations actually make sure that their technology and the services and solutions they were providing to citizens as well as other agencies were fully accessible to people with disabilities. Who better to let you know than people with disabilities? So
you put them you included them in the mission. How did that work?
It worked wonderful. We had great, wonderful successes, and I had some great, terrible, glorious failures as well along the way. I made a lot of a lot of mistakes that, I spent more than I made. I hired before I was really ready. I made a lot of rookie mistakes. I didn't know what I was doing, but I also achieved a lot of really amazing goals and changed a lot of people's lives too. How
many people do you suspect?
I would suspect thousands of people, because not only were I was impacting my employees, but also because we were dealing with such large businesses, like once again the TD Banks of the world. That's they're not only in Canada, they're in other countries as well, but the IBMs, the Microsoft, the AT&Ts, they were able to work with some of my employees that were considered very, very disabled, and to see the talent that was coming out of this small technology company. And they actually some of those companies started, luring my employees away, which at the time I was glad, but I also hated as an employer, because you're taking away my talented employees. But at the same time, you have to be glad with the sort of the irony of the situation. Sure. At the same time.
Can you give us, Debra, some sense about the range of disabilities that you were dealing with?
Yes, we were very diverse company. We had people that were blind. We had an intern that was blind and deaf. We had people that were had autism, Down syndrome. Not as many. Most of our employees were they had mental health or physical disabilities like cerebral palsy, MS, MD, traumatic brain injuries. It was paraplegic, quadriplegic. We were just very diverse. I had the company from 2001 until 2011. In 2011, I merged it with another business. But we were very diverse with all different kinds of disabilities, including one woman, for example, that was born with cerebral palsy, but her words, when she lies down, all she can do is blink her eyes, but she is a brilliant technologist and content developer. And so what we did was we used technology so that she could actually help our customers understand if their products were or were not accessible. And our clients loved it.
So you, through your own personal experience with having a Down syndrome daughter and also through dealing with all of these people with various disabilities, clearly have discovered that the disabled have a significant contribution to make and can be good employees. What do you think holds other businesses back from apparently sharing those views? Because we know that lots of them do.
Well, I think it's still the fear of the unknown. I know that a lot of times I have employers tell me, well, I'm afraid if I hired them, I would find out our bathrooms aren't accessible or we're doing something wrong. And I know in the United States, we're very big on litigation in the United States. And so employers are afraid to hire people with these especially significant disabilities because they're afraid they won't be productive. And if they don't do their jobs, they won't be able to get rid of them. So they're very fearful of the abilities, and technology has changed what many people with the severest of disabilities can do, and they're problem solvers because if you're born into the world or you've acquired a disability and now you can't see or you can't hear or you can't use your hands or your legs, you become a really good problem solver, which has amazing advantages to businesses.
Are there then clear guidelines in place, either by the state or by the national government, which indicate the do's and don'ts if you're hiring somebody with a disability?
There are. They are all over the world, and Canada certainly has made a lot of efforts to do this. You have ODA, I always have to look. Accessibility for Ontarians with disabilities. You've got human rights laws in Canada. The U.S., we have our Americans with Disabilities Act. Also, a really big one is the United Nations Convention on the Rights for Persons with Disabilities. Canada signed that, was one of the first countries to sign it and ratified it. We still haven't done it in the United States. We've signed it, but we haven't ratified it. And so there are very clear guidelines, and there's a lot of amazing disability groups that'll help employers if they're confused as well. But the Canadian government's done quite a bit with getting the information out there to employers, but there's still the fear of the unknown.
Debra, I always wondered why progress was as slow as it was on this issue, given that for at least a decade, maybe longer, the Senate Majority Leader in your country was Bob Dole, a guy who, half his body didn't work because of injuries sustained in World War II. I mean, he ran for president one year, so clearly Americans have seen a man with a significant disability reach almost the highest office in the land. What do you think still holds people back from realizing the contribution that disabled people can make?
Well, I think some of it in the United States is we've created accidentally an us and them mentality, and we have many times the community, the advocates, and I'm sort of an advocate in business, so I play in both worlds, but the advocates tell employers they're not doing enough and you better hurry up and we're going to sue you. And so there's this fighting going on back and forth, and many times we'll see Disney's a perfect example. Disney has spent a lot of money and efforts making sure that if you want to come and have a magical experience with Disney all over the world, They want you to come. And so the American Foundation of the Blind a few years ago gave them an award, their highest award, the Eagle Award, for the efforts that they had made to include persons with vision impairment and blindness in the parks. 3 months later, a group of citizens got together that are part of the National Federation of the Blind and sued them for not doing enough for people that are blind and vision impaired. So I'm not arguing the merits of the case, but it confuses employers and corporations a lot.
Do you think that governments need to, and I'm just throwing it out as an example, maybe offer special subsidies of some kind to encourage employers to hire people with disabilities?
I do not think that, and I know that sounds probably odd, but we've seen it's happened a lot. As a matter of fact, the Canadian government will help, and I do think it's important that they do that to help, like maybe with accommodations, to provide screen readers and assistive technology. But I don't think that you should do it saying, if you hire this person with a disability, I'm going to give you some money, only because that implies that that person with disability does not have the same quality and qualifications that others without disabilities have. And so I've seen, as I go around the world with this topic, you sort of have to be careful with that and quotas, quite frankly, because people with disabilities, we know for sure, add value to the workforce. And we have many examples all over the world, including lots of wonderful examples in Canada. Go to TD Bank. They're employing people with disabilities. Your Tim Hortons. There's some really interesting things that have happened. RIM is another example. They've done some really cool things to make sure that BlackBerry is accessible to all of us.
So what will it take, in your view, to get us to some point in the future, hopefully sooner rather than later, where employers looking for employees will start seeing the ability more than the disability? What needs to happen?
I think we need to do exactly what you're doing, Steve, and I applaud you for this. You have to talk about these good stories. Just because a person is blind or they're born with a disability or they acquire a disability doesn't mean they don't have things to add. I think we've got to get the media involved. We've got to get, Steve, you talking about these stories. And I'm very, very big on social media. And we got to talk about the stories on social media. And people with disabilities also have to, step up and have their voices heard. And I think parents have to do what I did. You have to say, yeah, no. I'm going to be part of the solution. I'm not just going to complain about you not including my daughter. You're going to include my daughter, and this is how I'm going to help you do it.
Well, all right. In our last minute then, just the one thing that I do hear frequently from critics is, I can't afford to do this. I can't afford to put in the extra ramp. I can't afford to make my area wheelchair accessible. I can't afford to, translate everything into Braille. That's the kind of criticism you hear. What would you say on that?
Well, I would say that you can't afford not to do it. There's 1 in 7 people with disabilities in the world, according to the World Health Organization. And remember, it's not just about people with disabilities. It's about the people that love somebody with a disability. And also, be careful about assuming you can't do it, you can't make everything Braille. We're not asking you to make everything Braille. Yes, we do want access to take our wheelchairs into your store or your bank, but there are some very practical ways to do it. And you've got some great organizations that'll help you, but you can't afford not to do it. You can't afford not to do it. There's too many of us that you're talking about. And if we know you're doing it, we will buy your devices and your products and your banking, and we'll reward you for it.
Debra, it's awfully good of you to join us.
And you'll get great employees.
I'm sorry, that is also something we hear all the time as well, yes. It's awfully good of you to join us on TVO tonight, Debra. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Steve. We really appreciate you talking about this topic.
Not at all. That's what we do here.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.